My mom called me nothing special at my baby shower. "You'll never be a good mother," she whispered. I just smiled, then my grandma took the mic and exposed her secrets. The baby shower was supposed to be simply a cozy Saturday afternoon in my best friend's backyard in Elk Grove, California, surrounded by close friends, relatives, and pastel decorations that somehow made me feel calm even though I was 8 months pregnant and constantly sore. My husband, Jonah, was fussing with the sound system because his cousin had volunteered to be DJ and forgot the right adapter. I was holding a sparkling lemonade and talking with Rena, my best friend since college, when my mom walked in, exactly 42 minutes late, like she was walking onto a movie set that waited for her to begin. Rochelle is that kind of person, always wearing something designer-looking, perfectly ironed, and just a little too polished for the setting. "Oh, look at you," she said when she approached me. Her smile was tight. "Pregnancy really rounds out your face, doesn't it?" I laughed lightly, used to her sideways compliments, and stepped back slightly. She gave me a brief, cold hug and then immediately turned her attention to the food table like she was inspecting an exhibit. I've always had a complicated relationship with her, but I was determined to let this day just be what it was. A celebration. I had been trying to mentally prepare myself for her presence for weeks. I even told Jonah, "Let's just focus on the baby and ignore her if she gets weird." He squeezed my hand and said, "I've got your back." It wasn't long before people started giving little speeches. Rena started, and her words were sweet and heartfelt. She talked about how she always knew I'd be a kind and thoughtful mother, just like I'd been a kind and thoughtful friend. Jonah said a few short things too. He's not a public speaker, but his voice cracked at one point, and my heart swelled. Then Rochelle stood up and asked if she could say a few words. I knew something was coming. I could feel it in my spine. She took the mic and smiled, not a warm smile, but the kind she wore when she was about to perform. That's what my mother always did, performed. She never had conversations. Just monologues with applause breaks. She started by telling a story about how, when I was 6, I cried because I wasn't picked first in gym class. Alina was always very sensitive, she said, chuckling. She once told me she wanted to be a ballerina. I told her, "Sweetheart, not everyone gets to be special." A few people gave awkward laughs. She went on, talking about how I struggled with math, how I was always in my own world, how I had potential, but not much drive. Every sentence was coded in that saccharine tone people use when they pretend to be affectionate but are really twisting the blade. "But now," she said, looking around at the guests, "she's having a baby. Maybe this will shape her into something stronger." Then she leaned down, pretending to kiss my cheek. "You'll never be a good mother," she whispered into my ear. I froze. That moment is hard to describe. My hands clenched around the stem of my glass. I felt my throat close, but I kept my face neutral. Just smiled. Because that's what I'd been doing my whole life with her, trying not to show that her words landed. Before I could even collect myself, someone else stood up. Grandma Miriam. I didn't even know she had come. She wasn't a loud woman, soft-spoken and graceful, even with the cane she'd been using since her hip surgery 2 years ago. Her presence immediately calmed people, like a warm hand on a cold shoulder. She didn't take the microphone. She didn't need to. Her voice, though gentle, cut through the backyard noise with unexpected force. "I wasn't planning to speak," she began. "But I've been quiet too long in this family." All eyes turned to her. My mother stiffened. I could see the tips of her fingers curling into fists. "Rochelle," Grandma said, turning toward her. "Do you remember how you told me once that secrets keep families safe? You were wrong. Secrets rot families from the inside." The crowd was dead silent. "Everyone," Grandma said, addressing the group now, "there's something you don't know about Rochelle. When she was 16, she got pregnant." I felt like my lungs had been punched empty. It wasn't something we talked about much. Back then, things were different. There was shame. Fear. She didn't want the baby. So I helped arrange a private adoption. I did it to protect her, but I see now it protected no one. She buried her grief and replaced it with cruelty. My mom opened her mouth to speak, but Grandma raised one hand. I've watched her carry this bitterness for over 40 years. And now I see her trying to hand it down. But you, Alina, are not your mother. You are not cold. You are not small. You are not incapable. Her eyes locked on mine. I saw tears in them. I don't think I'd ever seen my grandmother cry in public before. You will be a wonderful mother. Because you know what it feels like to grow up needing more. I don't remember how the next few minutes played out. I remember Jonah putting his arm around me. I remember Rena quietly guiding people back to their conversations. But Rochelle was already gone. She'd slipped away like she always did when she couldn't control the room. That night, she sent me a long text. You humiliated me. You don't know the whole story. Your grandmother had no right. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't respond. Jonah made tea and sat with me on the couch while I cried. Not just because of what happened that day, but because of what had happened for years, all the small wounds that added up. It felt like someone had finally held up a mirror and let me see that none of it was my fault. Grandma called the next day and asked if she had overstepped. I told her, no. You finally said what I've wanted to say my whole life. She was quiet for a moment and then said, it's never too late to stop repeating the mistakes of the people who raised us. That stuck with me. I haven't blocked my mom. I haven't cut her off. But I've drawn a clear line. She doesn't get to come into my life unless she respects it. And she hasn't reached out since. I'm due in 3 weeks. Jonah and I are ready. Nervous, of course. But I'm ready. And every night before bed, I talk to my daughter. I rest my hands on my belly and whisper, you're safe. You're loved. And I'm going to be better for you. Because I finally understand what being a mother really means. After the baby shower, things didn't return to normal, not that I expected them to. The atmosphere between me and my mom had always felt like walking across thin ice, but now it was as if I had stepped off the lake entirely. No more treading carefully. No more hoping she'd thaw. In the following days, I didn't hear anything else from her. No follow-up text. No phone call. It was silence, but not the peaceful kind. The kind that buzzes under your skin. I kept checking my phone like I was bracing for a storm, but the sky stayed eerily clear. Meanwhile, my grandma started checking in more. Not in a clingy way. Just short, sweet calls or little texts with things like, how are my girls today? Or don't forget to put your feet up. She'd mail me clippings from the local paper with recipes she thought I'd like, or little notes scribbled in the margins of baby books. It was quiet support, but it was everything. I didn't realize how starved I was for that kind of uncomplicated affection until I started receiving it. One afternoon, about a week after the shower, I visited her. She lives in a cozy bungalow in East Sacramento, just a few minutes from McKinley Park. Her garden is full of lavender and rosemary and those tiny solar lights that glow at night like fireflies. We sat on her porch, sipping herbal tea. The sun was dipping low, and the breeze was warm with just a hint of the evening chill. You really meant everything you said in the shower, didn't you? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Just smiled into her mug. Every word, she said. But I wish I'd said them years ago. When it could have saved you some pain. It was the first time I saw real regret on her face. Not performative. Not dramatic. Just quiet and real. I think I needed to go through it to see it clearly, I said. You can't clean a wound you pretend isn't there. She nodded slowly, then reached over and patted my hand. You're going to break the pattern. I know it. We didn't say anything else for a while. Just sat there listening to the wind move through the trees. Later that night, Jonah and I were folding the last load of baby clothes, tiny onesies, soft socks, little hats so small it felt impossible that an actual human would wear them. I found myself imagining what kind of mom I would be. I had no blueprint. Not really. But I had one strong instinct: whatever Rochelle did, I'd do the opposite. I wanted to listen without judgment. Love without condition. Protect without suffocating. I didn't need to be perfect, just present. Honest. Safe. Jonah held up a yellow onesie with a cartoon giraffe on the front and smiled. "Look at this," he said. "You think she'll like giraffes?" I shrugged, smiling. "She won't know what anything is for months." He held the onesie against his chest. "I'm just trying to impress our boss." I laughed. It was a genuine laugh, the kind I hadn't had much of since the baby shower. It felt good to remember that this baby was something we made together. Something separate from the mess I came from. A new start. That night, I dreamed I was in our old house, the one I grew up in. Only it was falling apart. Cracks in the walls, lights flickering. But in the dream, I wasn't scared. I was packing my bags. Getting ready to leave. I looked around one last time and said, "This isn't home anymore." Then I walked out the front door and woke up. I told Jonah about the dream the next morning over breakfast, and he just nodded. "Sounds like your brain's catching up to your heart," he said. Maybe he was right. A week later, a letter arrived. Not a text. Not an email. A physical letter in a white envelope with my full name handwritten across the front. It was from my mother. I stared at it for 10 minutes before opening it. Her handwriting was neat and sharp, just like her. The letter was only a few paragraphs long. She wrote that she didn't appreciate being ambushed at the shower and that she would have preferred a private conversation. She didn't deny what Grandma had said. But she didn't confirm it either. There was a line that stood out: "You don't understand the choices I had to make. You never will. And maybe that's for the best." That line rattled around in my head for days. It wasn't an apology. Not really. It was a justification. A wall, not a bridge. I sat down and started writing a response 3 times. But every time I tried, I stopped. Because I realized I wasn't writing back for me, I was doing it to keep a door open that I wasn't sure I wanted open anymore. A few days later, I tucked the letter into a drawer. Not to forget it, but to remind myself that I didn't owe her anything just because she gave birth to me. The hardest part wasn't the anger. It was the grief. I grieved the mother I never had. The one I kept hoping would show up. The one I thought might still be hiding somewhere underneath all the coldness. But she's not hiding. She just doesn't exist. There were moments when the guilt crept in, those old, familiar whispers: "You're too harsh. She's still your mom. Maybe you misunderstood her." But then I'd remember the way her words dug into me at the baby shower. The way she whispered that cruel prediction in my ear like she was cursing me on the most beautiful day of my life. And I'd hear my grandmother's voice in contrast, full of truth, not venom. That was the voice I wanted to carry forward. Jonah has been my rock through all of this. He didn't push me to make any decisions. He just listened. Held my hand. Made me laugh when I needed it. Every time I doubted myself, he'd look me in the eye and say, "Alina, you've already broken the cycle. Just by choosing to love better. The nursery is ready now. Soft grays and yellows. A wooden rocking chair we got from a little antique shop off J Street. A mobile with little stars and clouds that twirl slowly when the fan is on. I sit in that chair sometimes at night, just watching the room. Waiting. Hoping. Preparing. And knowing, deep down, that everything I thought I was missing, I will become. The day I went into labor, it was raining. It never rains in early October here, at least not like that. It was the first real storm of the season, the kind that makes the gutters overflow and the leaves stick to the pavement in flat orange patches. It started just after midnight. I was up, already restless, doing that thing where you're too pregnant to be comfortable and too anxious to sleep. Jonah was asleep, curled on his side, one hand draped over my thigh, like he always did. Then I felt it. Not the cartoonish splash like in movies, just a slow, warm trickle. For a second, I wasn't even sure. I sat up, turned on the bedside lamp, and said his name quietly. Jonah. He sat up instantly, his face already tense. It's time? I think so. It was strange how calm I felt. Like I was watching it all happen from above. We'd packed the hospital bags 2 weeks ago. Everything was ready. But no one is ever really ready. The drive to the hospital felt surreal. Rain tapped steadily on the windshield. The streets were dark and slick, but quiet. I remember gripping the armrest, trying to count the distance between contractions like they told us in the class. I was already struggling to focus. By the time we got to Sutter Medical Center, the pain was picking up fast. Jonah held my hand the entire way in. The nurses were kind, brisk but warm, guiding me through the intake like it was all routine, which, for them, it was. For me, it felt like crossing into another life. Labor wasn't easy. 13 hours. Every one of them is carved into memory. At one point, I remember vomiting from the pain. I was sobbing into Jonah's shirt, embarrassed and exhausted. I can't do this, I whispered, I'm not strong enough. He kissed the top of my head and said, You already are. Just keep breathing. One breath at a time. I didn't think of my mom once during labor. Not once. It was like she had no place in that room, no weight at that moment. It was just me, Jonah, and the small, impossible thing we were about to meet. And then she was here. Leora. They placed her on my chest, and I broke open. I sobbed so hard I couldn't breathe. She was slick and red and wrinkled and perfect. Her tiny body curled into mine like she'd been waiting to come home. I looked at her and felt something dislodge in my chest, like all the rusted gears inside me had finally turned, and the machine of my heart was working properly for the first time. I'm your mama, I whispered, over and over. I'm your mama. I've got you. The first week home was a blur of diapers, feedings, burp cloths, and the strange, aching sweetness of sleeplessness. Leora had a soft whimper that built slowly before she wailed. She loved being swaddled. Hated diaper changes. Jonah took to fatherhood in that quiet, devoted way I hoped he would. Every time he picked her up, he murmured nonsense songs and rocked side to side like a human metronome. Sometimes I just watched them, feeling this dull throb in my throat, part awe, part disbelief that this was real. We didn't hear from my mom. No call. No visit. No card. The silence felt both disappointing and clarifying. A message in its own right. Grandma Miriam, on the other hand, came by once a week. Not for long. Just enough to drop off soup, hold Leora for a few minutes, and share 1 or 2 stories about when Rochelle was a baby, ones I'd never heard before. She didn't cry much as an infant, Grandma said once, rocking Leora gently. Always watching, always calculating. Like she didn't trust the world. She still doesn't, I said. Grandma sighed and ran her fingers over Leora's soft hair. Some people armor up so early they forget how to take it off. There was no venom in her voice. Just sadness. Around the 6-week mark, a small package arrived at our door. There was no return address. Inside was a soft, hand-knit baby blanket, deep plum and ivory. I recognized the style immediately. Rochelle had taken a knitting class during lockdown and made a dozen scarves she never wore. There was a folded card with only 4 words. For Leora. From Mom. No message. No apology. No warmth. Just enough to remind me she existed and that she hadn't changed. Jonah looked over my shoulder as I held the card and said, She's testing the water. I nodded. Yep. Just enough to make me feel guilty if I don't respond. He watched me for a long moment. So, what do you want to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want to do? Part of me wanted to call her the dutiful daughter. Say thank you. Pretend this was some kind of olive branch and meet her halfway. But a larger part of me, the part that had bled and birthed and become someone new in that hospital room, didn't want to make space for her again. Not when she hadn't earned it. Not when I was finally healing. So I folded the blanket, tucked it into a drawer, and left the card untouched. I didn't throw it away. But I didn't let it in either. A few weeks later, I took Leora for a walk around McKinley Park. The air was crisp, the trees shedding the last of their golden leaves. The world felt quiet, like it was preparing to sleep. I walked slowly, watching the ducks in the pond, the joggers in pairs, the older couples shuffling hand in hand. At one bench, I saw two women sitting side by side, maybe a mother and daughter, maybe not. One was holding a sleeping baby. The other was just watching her, eyes soft and distant. For a moment, I felt that familiar sting in my chest. The ache for something I'd never had. But then I looked down at Leora, snug in her carrier, tiny fists clenched against her chest, her lips puckered slightly in sleep. And I realized I didn't need to fix what came before. I just had to love what came next. It was just after New Year's when Rochelle called. Not a text. Not an email. A real phone call. Her name lit up my screen at 8:47 p.m. while I was in the middle of nursing Leora and trying not to drop my phone into a bowl of half-eaten oatmeal. For a moment, I froze. My thumb hovered over the screen. I hadn't spoken to her since the baby shower. I let it go to voicemail. The message came in a minute later. Her voice, as usual, was calm. Carefully measured. Alina. I wanted to check in. I hope everything is going well with the baby. I'd like to come by sometime. Let me know. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just a gentle nudge at a boundary I hadn't moved. I played it for Jonah after putting Leora down to sleep. She sounds normal, he said cautiously. She always sounds normal, I replied. Even when she's twisting the blade. We sat on the edge of the bed in silence for a while. I stared at the wall, trying to parse my own emotions. I don't know what she wants from me, I finally said. She probably doesn't know either, Jonah replied. He was right. She never reached out to repair anything, only to resume. That was her pattern. Skip over the hurt. Reassert her presence. Expect compliance. And still, I wrestled with it. I kept thinking about how I'd feel if Leora grew up and shut me out. If she stopped taking my calls, ignored my gifts, told me with her silence that I had done too much damage. I would be devastated. But I wouldn't blame her. I couldn't. Because I'd lived what it felt like to be a child in that situation. And no matter how many times Rochelle hinted at reconciliation, she never once showed me she understood what she'd done wrong. A few days after the voicemail, I went to visit Grandma Miriam. She'd been down with a cold for a week and missed her regular Sunday visit. I brought over some vegetable stew and a few of the books she liked, the old crime thrillers with dog-eared pages and broken spines. She was sitting in her recliner with a thick quilt over her lap, knitting needles working away like little metal birds. She called me, too, Grandma said without me even bringing it up. Your mother. I glanced at her. What did she say? Same thing she said to you, I imagine. I want to come over. I want to see the baby. She sent a blanket a few weeks ago. Grandma raised her eyebrows slightly but didn't comment. She tied off a row and set her knitting aside. She's never had to reckon with herself, she said. Everything she did, she learned to justify. That's how she survived. I nodded. That doesn't make it okay. No, Grandma agreed. It doesn't. But it explains her. And sometimes understanding helps. I looked at her, this woman who had held so many silences, so many secrets, for so long. Do you regret it? I asked. Not speaking up sooner? Her eyes didn't flinch. Every day. I thought I was protecting her. Then I thought I was protecting you. But I was really protecting myself from the shame, the confrontation. And that silence hurt both of you. I didn't say anything for a while. Just let her words settle. You don't owe her a relationship, she said eventually. But if you do let her back in, you can do it on your terms. That stuck with me. A week later, I responded to the voicemail. A simple text, "We're doing well. Thank you for the blanket. Leora is healthy and growing fast. I'm not ready for a visit yet. I'll let you know when I am." She replied in less than 5 minutes. I understand. I'm here when you're ready. It was the first time I'd ever set a boundary with her that she didn't push against. But I didn't take it as growth. I took it as a strategy. Rochelle always played the long game. Still, the tension in my chest loosened a little. I didn't owe her my forgiveness, but I did owe myself peace. By February, I had settled into a rhythm with Leora. Mornings were soft and sleepy, with warm bottles and babbling. Afternoons were for walks and naps, and evenings were when she'd have her witching hour of endless fussing and squirming and that one cry she reserved just for Jonah, as if she knew he had the calm voice. Motherhood didn't come to me like a light switch. It was slow. Awkward. Tender. I had to earn my own confidence. But with every diaper changed, every fever soothed, every little giggle pulled from her belly, I felt more grounded. One night while I was nursing her, she reached up and touched my face and just laid her fingers on my cheek, barely coordinated, totally pure. I started crying without warning. Not sad tears. Just a release. All the tension of the past few months, all the years of feeling small, unwanted, not special melted under her tiny hand. And that's when I knew, Rochelle could never take this from me. Not now. Not ever. This wasn't her story anymore. But just as I started to feel safe in that new peace, it shifted again. It was late March when Grandma called. Her voice was slower than usual. "I need to ask you a favor," she said. "It's about Rochelle." My stomach dropped a little. "Okay," I said carefully. "She came by yesterday. Unannounced. Sat in my kitchen for over an hour. Didn't say much. Just looked around. Like she didn't recognize the place." I was quiet. I could feel the tension creeping back in, the instinct to brace. She asked me if I thought you'd ever forgive her. I closed my eyes. "And what did you say?" I told her she'd have to earn it. That it wasn't something she could wait out or wish into being. That you were a mother now, and that changes things. Did she listen? "I think so," Grandma said. For once, she didn't argue. She just nodded. Then she left. Something about that unsettled me more than a confrontation would have. My mother never left anything unsaid. Her silence now felt like the first move in a different kind of game. It was early April when Rochelle asked to meet. Not through a call or text but through Grandma. "She wants to see you." "Just you?" "No baby. No Jonah. Just a conversation," Grandma said one Sunday afternoon, carefully placing her teacup down as though softening the message. "She said she won't push. If you say no, that's it." I sat with that for 2 days. I didn't want to see her. I didn't miss her. But something inside me, maybe closure, maybe anger with a face, wanted to look her in the eye and say everything I'd held in my chest for 34 years. So I agreed. We met at a small cafe on 28th and N Street. Neutral ground. Public. Comfortable enough, but not intimate. When I walked in, she was already sitting at a table in the back. Hair pinned, cardigan ironed, lipstick neat, always curated. But she looked smaller. Not older. Just diminished. "Alina," she said softly, as if unsure how to begin. I didn't let her start. "I'll go first," I said, slipping into the seat across from her. "You don't get to steer this." She nodded. Her hands stayed folded in front of her. I want to be clear, I began. You hurt me. Not just once, not just at the baby shower, but for most of my life. With your comparisons, your silences, your backhanded praise. You made me feel like I had to earn your love, and no matter what I did, it was never enough. She blinked but didn't interrupt. I grew up thinking I was defective. Because if your own mother thinks you're weak and disappointing, how could that not be true? You poisoned my confidence. But here's the thing, I leaned in slightly. You don't get to do that to my daughter. Her lips parted slightly, but I didn't stop. You told me I'd be a bad mother before I even held my child. You said it like a prophecy. But Leora, she's happy. She's healthy. She reaches for me when she cries, she falls asleep in my arms, and I will make damn sure she never feels the way I did growing up. I took a breath. My hands trembled a little, but I didn't back off. So if you want to be in her life, it will be on my terms. No insults disguised as jokes. No guilt. No manipulation. If you so much as hint that she isn't special, I will cut you out without a second thought. The pause that followed felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Then she nodded. Slowly. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know how to be better. Then don't be in her life until you figure it out, I said flatly. I stood up. I'm not angry anymore, I added. But I'm not waiting for you to change either. And I left. I didn't hear from her for a while after that. Not a text. Not a voicemail. Not another blanket in the mail. And honestly, I felt lighter. The space she left behind didn't feel empty, it felt clean. Life moved forward. Leora started rolling over. Then sitting up. Then the babbling sounds that Jonah swore were dada, even though I was pretty sure she just liked the D sound. Grandma stayed involved, always gentle, always present. She never told me what to do, only offered space and stories and occasional wisdom in the form of homemade banana bread. Then one day in June, I got a certified letter. From a lawyer. At first, my heart dropped into my stomach. Some paranoid part of me thought it might be a legal drama. But no. It was something else entirely. My grandmother had changed her will. And I wasn't just a beneficiary. I was the executor. There, in clean legal language, was a detailed breakdown. All her assets, modest but meaningful, her house, her savings, her jewelry would go to me, Jonah, and Leora. Not Rochelle. The will included a statement, handwritten and notarized. To Alina, I love you. You are my redemption. I cannot undo what I allowed, but I can make sure you and Leora are protected. This is my apology, and my legacy. To Rochelle, you had my silence for too long. You do not get my home, my name, or my memory. Miriam, it was the gentlest act of vengeance I had ever seen. Honest. Final. Without cruelty but with clarity. Rochelle hadn't just lost control, she had lost legacy. She reached out within days. A string of texts, ranging from indignation to pleas to silence again. I didn't respond. What was there to say? She tried calling Grandma directly, but Grandma didn't answer. That was her final power play. And it failed. We threw a small party for Leora's first birthday. Nothing fancy, just friends, Jonah's family, Rena, and Grandma, who wore a floral dress and gave Leora a baby bracelet engraved with "You Are Enough." I looked around that day and realized that my family wasn't broken, it was rebuilt. Just not by Rochelle. And that was the true revenge. Not screaming matches. Not insults returned. But living well. Living love. Living free of her. And as I watched Jonah lift Leora up in the air and make her squeal with joy, Grandma laughing nearby with a slice of cake in hand, I felt something settle in me like a book finally placed on its rightful shelf. Peace. Not the kind that asks you to forget. The kind that says, you survived. You won.